in case you weren't aware, we are recording this. We'll throw it up on our YouTube channel for later, and we'll also use this session and the answers that we get from Penda to update our FAQ on the News Revenue Fellowship. So I'm going to go ahead and do a super quick presentation, and then we'll roll right into your really thoughtful questions. I'm going to share in the chat. We have a fun little tool called the retro board that we're using, where we've posted everyone's questions from the registration form up there, and we'll roll through those one by one. Feel free as you're looking at the retro to add a question or two while I'm talking, and then we'll get right into it. So first of all, I'm Cassie Balfour, if I haven't met you. I'm the membership programming manager here at Lion. On the call, we also have Annika, who's the deputy director of Lion, and Penda, who is our news revenue coach and will be implementing this program. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. What's the quote of the year? Can everybody see my screen? Does it look good? Or maybe the quote is, "Am I muted?" Or not. So yes, for those folks who aren't already Lion members and are considering membership or just curious, I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about what Lion does. So Lion Publishers, we provide teaching, resources, and community to independent news entrepreneurs as they're building and developing sustainable news businesses. We have over 275 members and growing across the US and Canada. And some of our partners include the Facebook Journalism Project, which is funding the News Revenue Fellowship, which we'll be talking about today, the Democracy Fund, the Google News Initiative, and the Knight Foundation. And so just very quickly about the Lion News Revenue Fellowship, the program focuses on providing direct funding and training for Lion members to hire revenue generating roles in their news businesses. The fellowship, as I mentioned earlier, will be led by our news revenue coach, Penda Howell. He has more than 25 years of sales, marketing, and revenue generating experience. I'll drop this into the chat, but maybe some of you have already seen his Dear Penda column, which we recently debuted in our newsletter the other week, where members are, like you guys, are able to submit questions about revenue generation, and Penda's been answering those for the membership. And so a little bit about the fellowship. In addition to providing hiring support and coaching for revenue fellows, the selected businesses will also receive partial funding to pay for the fellow's salary over 2 years, with the goal being that by the end of the 2-year fellowship, we want news revenue fellows to be self-sustaining. Sorry, I don't know where that left off. But for the sake of time, I'll stop sharing and just say what I was going to say, which is that applications for the News Revenue Fellowship are due on June 18th. If you're already a member, you've already reapplied for 2021, you don't have to worry. You can check your status by just going to the News Revenue application, which we'll drop here again in the chat in just a minute. And if you show up on the member list, you're all set. You're good to go in terms of applying for the fellowship. If you're not sure about your status, or if you need to reapply for membership for 2021, or you need me to check on it, please feel free to email me. We had said originally that folks should reapply or apply for Lion membership by June 4th in order to be considered for the News Revenue Fellowship. But if you get your applications into Lion by this Friday, June 11th, close of business, that should be totally fine. But again, just let me know, reach out to me, and we can check your status. And from there, Annika, if you want to start sharing your screen, I dropped in the chat the easy retro board. Like I said, we already kind of put in questions anonymously, of course, from the registration form that you all already submitted. And we can take just a minute to, if you want to take a minute to look over the questions we have, see if any are missing, or if you have other questions that have come up in the meantime, and just, we'll put a quick timer on the clock, and feel free to add in any questions that you'd want to put Annika's demonstrating how to do that at the top. You just hit that plus sign. And also we're hoping to get through all of the questions today. But if folks want to take a quick minute, this minute to also vote, you can just hit those thumbs up signs that Annika's hovering around to indicate that you really want that question added to the board, and we'll make sure to get to it. Cool.
Like a flight stewardess.
Yes. I'm going to put a quick timer on here just of a minute. And if anybody wants to hum the Jeopardy theme song while people do that. And if you're just joining, I'm going to put, we're using what Annika has on her screen right now, what's called a retro board, to add questions about the News Revenue Fellowship. We've already put in some of those questions from the registration form, but if you're just joining, feel free to add a question, look over those and put a thumbs up or press the thumbs up for the question you really want answered. I just threw that into the chat. And for some reason you're having problems with the retro board, you can't add a question, feel free to throw it in the chat and we can manage that and make sure it gets in there too. Okay, looks like we're about done. So we'll get started. And if anybody hears their question read aloud and wants to add something to it, feel free to expand in the chat or just unmute yourself and feel free to jump in. Otherwise, Annika, take it away.
Thanks, Cassie. All right, it's really great to see all of y'all. Thanks so much for your interest in this program. The only thing I would add to Cassie's very excellent introduction to this is that this is our very first time running this program. We are going to learn a lot of things along the way in terms of what works and what can be better next time. And so if you apply for this program, if you are accepted, you will be learning alongside us. So just want to be really clear about that up front. Fortunately, I think all of our members have a very deep commitment to learning every single day, since we're all trying to figure out what it means to run an independent news business. So I'm not too worried about it. So the first question here, can this funding be applied to transition part-time to full-time hires with more responsibilities? Penda, what do you think?
Hello, everybody. And before I answer that question, I'd just like to say my email address is in the chat for further questions that you might have beyond today's session that you need further clarification on. Feel free to shoot me an email and try and answer those as best I can for you. Happy to answer those for you. So back to the first question, can this funding be applied to transition part-time to full-time hires with more responsibilities? I would say yes, with the caveat that the person will still need to meet the criteria of the fellow. And so, as long as they meet the criteria that's set, yes, that will be supported.
So one question about the application, we have a revenue stream that's not listed. So the revenue streams won't add up to 100. Any way you suggest we account for that? Right.
So the way I read this is that you've got various revenue streams and a portion of your total revenue stream comes from this partnership. I would simply say, figure out what percentage of that revenue comes to your company or your firm from that partnership and include it in your overall percentage. And that should be enough.
Yeah, and I think in the application, we have the structure of it as a drop-down menu. So if you just want to add that as a note in the very last question in the application, which I think is just a free form question, that would be great. Definitely not a big deal. We'll make sure to account for that when evaluating your application. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like we want applicants to show success already in the funding stream we plan to focus on with this fellowship. We don't yet have success to show since we don't have a person, they haven't had the capacity to launch this funding strategy. That said, we have great reason to believe we'll achieve success with the capacity that this position would provide. Can we explain our reasoning for that anticipated success rather than talk about the success, that they've had so far? Or is it a requirement that they've already raised revenue through this strategy that they want to focus on in the fellowship?
So I think the thought is if you've started to monetize a specific revenue stream that shows promise, we could assist the fellow with expanding and enhancing what's already in place. And I think that simply increases the chances for success for both the organization and the fellow. Having said that, you can explain your reasoning for anticipated success in that particular vertical as a part of your application.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I would also say there is a difference between success and traction, right? So if you can at least show some traction that you have gained with this revenue strategy so far, even if it's just a small amount of money, but you can show that you are meeting a need, that there's interest, funding interest in that is reflected in this revenue strategy, then that is ideal. I think we answered this question in the last information session as well. This doesn't mean that you can't experiment with new revenue streams in the program, but our first priority is for you to really build a strong foundation for revenue. And in order to do that quickly, and again, with the goal being that this person can fund their own position within 2 years, we really want to focus on, the traction that you have already been able to demonstrate, and then from there be able to experiment with other revenue streams. Okay, could you define the nuance of what y'all are looking for with the sustainability audit, yet not be able to fund a salesperson? Okay, if you've worked with someone on a contract basis, but would really benefit from a full-time or part-time person, are you still eligible? So I think we've answered the second part of that question already, Penda. It's totally fine if you've worked with someone in the past or you're currently working with someone, you're definitely still eligible. Right. For the first part of that question, I'm happy to take that really quick because we've been working on this sustainability audit. The goal of the sustainability audit is not to stamp a yes, you are sustainable, no, you are not sustainable kind of designation based on the data that we're asking you for. It's more about our ability to assess where you are on the path to sustainability. And the reason that we're tying that to evaluating applicants for this program is because we want to make sure that we can actually help you, and that you are in a good position for us to be able to support you through this program. So you don't have to demonstrate sustainability in order to get into a program that's supposed to help you with sustainability. That obviously wouldn't make any sense, but we really are just looking for data that points to the fact that you're on the path towards sustainability. And we are still figuring out what exactly that looks like. Frankly, the whole industry is still figuring out what that looks like. And so this is part of our process for better understanding that. Okay, if we are selected, when can we expect the News Revenue Fellow to start working in our organization?
Right, so I think we have the anticipated start date for the fellow to start working with the organization slated for September of 2021. So that is the working timeline. The specific date is still being fleshed out, but that's the timeline, September of this year.
What are the requirements? So I would just point you back to the FAQ that we have, and Cassie can drop a link into that, a link to that in the chat again. And then Penda, could you answer this question? Will a small one-person newsroom have a chance at getting this fellowship?
Right. So when I saw this question, I thought, it's going to be kind of tough for a small one-person newsroom. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it's going to be kind of tough, right?
It totally depends. I mean, we see
right.
solopreneurs in our line membership all the time that, can absolutely blow folks out of the water. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't think it's about the size of the newsroom. It's really
right.
just about meeting these other requirements.
I agree totally. So you answered it in a nutshell. So yeah.
Cool. Does the grant and this is a little bit of a semantics thing. We wouldn't call this a grant. We'd call it a subsidy. But the funding that you'd receive through this program, does it include funds for salary and benefits?
And the answer to that is yes.
Yes, we would work with you to figure out how we could best make that happen. The one thing that I want to be super transparent about is in getting the funding for this program, we have received sort of a lump sum, and so it is our job to figure out how to help as many publishers as possible, but with the most substantial help that we can offer, right? We don't want to give out $5,000 grants. We don't want to give 10,000, sorry, I use the word grants now. We don't want to give $5,000 stipends out or $10,000 stipends out. We want to make sure that the money that we're giving out for this is really going to enable you to hire the best person for this position. And again, meet that end goal, which is to be sustainable for their position to be self-sustaining by the end of 2 years. So we will be making those decisions throughout the application process once we better understand what the need is across everyone who has applied. Okay, I'm in the early phases of establishing a news agency startup. Am I eligible for this fellowship? If I am successful, do I have any say over the fellow assigned to my project and our focus?
So I would say, if you're in the early phases of establishing an organization, you're not really going to have any revenue streams to speak of, right? And so that's one of the requirements to be considered for participation in this program. You've got to have some sort of revenue stream that's currently active and that's being monetized right now, no matter how small it is. And so I'm not sure about your requirements there. It doesn't sound like you meet that one. So I think that would be a little tough. If you are successful, however, you do have a say over the fellow that's assigned to your project or your focus, because this is a person that you'll be hiring. We'll just be assisting you essentially with identifying the best candidate. If you need our help with that. But this is a person that you'll be interviewing and you'll be hiring.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm interested in knowing what the ideal funding amount looks like to Lion. I think I just answered this. If you have a follow-up, if you ask this question, you have a follow-up, feel free to drop it in the chat. But again, we are going to be evaluating requests across the board as we get these applications. And so we'll be figuring that out as we go along. Will participating in the G&I program disqualify us? And I think this is in reference to the Startup Lab program, Penda.
Right. So I don't think it disqualifies you. No, you're free to apply to this program as well.
Yeah, and that being said, right, we have almost 300 members, and so we are trying to give as many folks access to these opportunities as possible. So it certainly doesn't disqualify you. You should absolutely apply. And that being said, we want to share the love across the membership. On the application, should we include information about advertising sales from print also, or digital only? We have print and digital, so we have both.
Right. So this program is focused primarily on digital advertising. And so we're mostly interested in your digital revenue streams, and that is where your focus should be.
Yes. If you're earning revenue from print, again, you can note it in the application somewhere where we'll certainly take a look at that. But when it comes to supporting, as Penda said, we will be supporting the digital revenue specifically. Does the program look at the existing revenue models of the organization, how it is currently doing things today, or is it primarily focused on training and onboarding a new person to the team?
So I would answer that by saying the existing revenue model for the organization is important, because that will help inform our decision-making with regard to what revenue stream we suggest the fellow concentrate on initially. However, ongoing training and support will be provided to the fellow, along with the publisher if necessary.
Would it disqualify a young news organization if we use the money to pay for an editor, to free up the publisher to devote full time to revenue generating activities?
Hmm.
I don't think so.
Hmm.
I don't think so. If you ask this question, feel free to email us. I'm happy to think about it some more and kind of talk through that scenario. But off the top of my head, we really want the funding to go toward a person in a revenue generating role. If that means that you as the founder would give up your salary to hire an editor and then apply for this program, and then if you meet the requirement of the news revenue fellows that we're looking for and are accepted, then I suppose you could be in the program, but that's just off the top of my head, and I'm happy to think through it a little bit more.
Yeah, that definitely requires further conversation, for sure.
Yeah. So as Penda said, he dropped his email in the chat. So if you ask that question, feel free to follow up with us and we can talk through it with you. Your application asks us how much we can spend on funding the position ourselves. What's your ideal answer for this?
And so I think I don't think we have an ideal answer. I think the ideal answer is just to be candid and honest and put the exact amount that you feel comfortable committing to, because it's going to be factored into the overall compensation for this person. And so it's going to need to be guaranteed. So I would say just list whatever you're comfortable listing and that you're sure you'll be able to cover.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we really would like to see news organizations be able to put something in toward this person's salary. I think the point that Penda made early on was totally right, that it's important that Lion and the news organization that we're working with have some skin in this game. So, you know, even if it's a very small amount of money, it's something. And so we ideally would like to see news organizations make that commitment. How does our participation in other revenue programs affect our application?
I think we answered this earlier. It doesn't. You can still apply.
What won't you consider funding?
Anything not directly linked to generating revenue.
Good answer, Penda. That's great. Any concerns with two organizations applying jointly? We're both in the same town and work on stuff together already. We'd like to do more together. I think we had a question similar to this last time too, Penda.
We did. And so we thought this would be doable. I think we also said though that there's a need for one organization to be responsible for the back-end compensation for the fellow, even though there's an understanding that collectively you guys would be working together on outreach for this person, but there would need to be a clear understanding documented that the fellow's compensation is covered and that he's on somebody's books, one person's book, he or she.
I think that's totally right. This person needs to be on somebody's payroll, and so some organization is going to need to take on, you know, that commitment to the person and handle all of everything that goes into hiring a full-time or part-time employee. But we're totally open to thinking about what a collaboration might look like. We think it's a pretty cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
Are you more interested in creative positions or more interested in how the position, whatever it is, will benefit the news organization? For example, if we just want to hire a salesperson but can show the impact they would make in our market and for our sustainability, is that okay? I'm not sure I know. If you ask this question, feel free to unmute and just clarify.
Yeah, because I'm not quite sure what this is asking either.
No pressure. Feel free to drop something in the chat that clarifies it or follow up with us after, but I'm not entirely sure what you mean by creative positions. So I think you just need to understand that a little bit better. Okay, what exactly do you mean by sustainability audit? Again, I'll take this one really quick since we've been working on this. So right now we are creating kind of a list of data points that we want to look at in order to better understand what makes a news organization sustainable. So as you all know, across the industry, everyone's talking about, sustainability is the goal and we have to create more sustainable news organizations. I personally don't know what that means exactly, and I don't exactly know how to measure it. So we've been talking, at Lion about how we can put better metrics around this idea of sustainability. So the way that we would like to be thinking about it is more holistically than just, more revenue than expenses. So we're talking about journalistic impact as part of that puzzle, operational resilience, which is everything from ensuring your team reflects the audience that you're serving, that your founder has a succession plan, that the whole organization doesn't just hinge on one person, that your staff, you can retain your staff and they feel, excited to stay and do the work. So those are all pieces of operational resilience. And then the final piece being financial health, which of course is metrics like operating expenses versus revenue, runway, all of those sorts of data points. So for everybody who applies, we'll be selecting a certain number of finalists who will go through this sustainability audit process. It basically just involves all of us or the team at Lion asking you for data about your news organization. We take all of that. We do a little bit of an analysis for you and give it back to you. So, and then that will be kind of submitted alongside your application for the program to evaluate whether you are in the News Revenue Fellowship program. So the sustainability audit will be something we continue to refine over time. It's certainly not perfect yet, but it is something that we feel like we can contribute to the overall conversation about what it means to be a sustainable news organization. Okay, so I know it will vary, but how much do you expect to provide generally for each position?
Right. So
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. What do you think, Penda?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to vary. I think there's other variables that we'll take into consideration, such as geography, and those sorts of things. So there's no real number that we can give you right now.
Yeah. And I totally understand that that's frustrating if you're really just trying to understand a number so that you can think through, whether this program is worth your time to apply. I totally get that. And we want to be respectful of the amount of time that it takes to apply for these things. We also, I just don't want to overpromise or underpromise because I just genuinely don't know. So if you read our post, you'll know that we are committing $1 million to this program over 2 years. You could do a little bit of back of the napkin math yourself just to get a sense for, what kind of dollars might be involved in that. Certainly, we're not going to be giving out $100,000 to each organization. So, happy to follow up over email if there's a more specific question there that you're hoping to get some more insights on. Okay, how many months of revenue generation is ideal to establish a track record that Lion would accept?
Right. So I don't think there's a minimum actually. I think the idea is that you've established some sort of revenue generating track record, and that could look a number of different ways, right? You could have a partnership with somebody that you just signed a contract for 6 months, or you could have 3 months of revenue from a specific vertical where you've got agreements to go the balance of the year. You can include all of that information, and all of it will be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, to clarify, we have a part-time publisher who works on revenue. Could that person move into full-time?
Yeah, right. I think, I think we said that would be okay, right?
I think the tricky thing with this is it depends on the context of your organization. If you're my instinct here is if you are a little bit larger and your publisher can really only 100% be responsible for generating revenue, then I think this is fine.
Right.
If your publisher is also editing, maybe still doing a little bit of reporting, maybe picking up other, operational type tasks, I just think that's going to be tougher.
Right.
And Penda, you spoke to this last time too, that it's just really important for the person in this role to be able to fully focus on revenue generation.
That's exactly right, Annika. And so, our goal here is to not only set up the fellow for success, but to also set the company up for success, right? This person is going to need to be laser focused on driving revenue, and that's going to require 100% of their attention and time.
Yeah. So Kimberly, I see your note in the chat. I think that's fine then. I think you should apply, and that's something that you can make a note of in your application. We do have that very last question in the application that says, is there anything else we should know about your application? So please make that note there. Feel free to give us a little bit more context about what this person would be doing and what it would look like for that role to shift. And we're happy to consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when would the check clear if selected? Is it a lump sum at the beginning of each year? Great, it's a great question.
Good question, right? Yeah. I'm not sure about that. What, Annika, you could probably answer that.
You know what I would say here is we want to do what's best for y'all. For those who are accepted into the program, we want to make sure that you have the money when you need the money to cover the salaries. So this is something we can absolutely work out and make sure that that it's not a hurdle for you to be successful in this program. Okay. All right. Again, we've got this last question here. Oh, never mind. One more question. Will this round be the only offering of this program? I hope not. I hope not. It totally depends on how successful we are with this program so that we can make the case for more funding in the future. But I will tell you that I've heard from so many people, Lion members and otherwise, who have said that this is exactly the kind of program that would help them build their news organization and, again, get it on the path to sustainability. So I really hope we can continue to offer a program like this in the future. Okay, I think that's it. Cassie, I'll turn it back over to you. And if you did ask this question that we have left up here and want to clarify with us, please follow up with us over email, and we're happy to answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this afternoon. We really appreciate your interest, and we're just so jazzed internally about everybody's interest and thoughtful questions. And it's really been, like, as Annika said, this is a pilot. We're building it, from the ground up. So your questions have really provided so much insight into kind of what we need to answer. So, like I said, we'll be sending out a recording. I'll be doing that later tonight of this, and we'll be updating the FAQ based on these info sessions we've had. If you have any questions about your membership, feel free to email me. If you have any questions about the News Revenue Fellowship, you can email Penda or me or Annika, and we can route your question correctly internally. No worries about that. So thank you so much for your time and your interest and your support. Okay, everyone have a great afternoon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank y'all. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.